Okay, so last week we worked with loops, but this week we'll be working with nested loops. What's the difference? Well, this is a dowel. This is a dowel that can be nested inside of another dowel, and so on and so forth. So a nested loop is simply a loop that fits within another loop. Confused yet? Don't be. It's really a fairly simple concept once you get the hang of it. Instead of just repeating one action, you can repeat several actions inside of one bigger loop. Okay, so now that we've discussed the concept of a nested loop, let's look at what we actually are going to be working on in Snap today. So we're making a new program. Lab 2.2 is titled Another Brick in the Wall for a reason. Our finished program will do something like this. It will quickly draw small rectangles, offset so that they look like they're stacked up like bricks, and go all the way from the bottom of our screen to the top. Basically building one giant solid brick wall. So how do we go from having no code to having code that will execute this and optimize code using loops and nested loops? Well, before we get to our loops and nested loops, it's important to do the thing once. And the thing, in this case, is creating a rectangle. Because again, all that this code is really doing is drawing a rectangle over and over and over and moving before it draws it, so that it's drawn in different locations. So before we worry about all the movement, we just need to draw one rectangle. So let's go break that down. So you already know how to draw a square. We've done this at least a couple of times. You move a certain number of units in one direction, and then you turn, and then you move again and turn. But to make this code work as easily as possible, I'm actually going to take the turning out of the equation and instead use change x and change y. So the first thing we need to do when we're drawing something is put pen down. So I've got pen down here. So once I put my pen down, I have change x by 20 and change y by 10. So remember, x is your horizontal movement and y is your vertical movement. So it will go over 20, and then it will go up 10, and then change x by negative 20 will bring it back to the left, and change y by negative 10 will bring it down again. So if I were to take these all apart and do them one at a time, it would look like this. Over 20, up 10, left 20, down 10. And we have one perfect rectangle. If we put these statements together into one block of code, we click it and pretty instantaneously get a rectangle. So before anything else, build this right here. Once you have a rectangle, we can start to think about how we're going to use it to create a brick wall. The next step to get your wall started will be to use another change x by 20. Because if we draw a rectangle and then move to the right-hand corner of that rectangle and draw it again, then we can start to create our first row of bricks. So you can see if I were to put all of this together and continually press it, I'll create a line of bricks. So you already know how to create a single brick, and now you know how to create a row of bricks. So the next step we need to think about is when we get to one side of the screen, how do we move it up and then have it start to draw bricks going in the opposite direction? And then repeat that until it goes all the way to the top of the screen. So first, let's take this block of code that's working pretty well for us, and let's put it inside of a loop. Now, I don't want this to happen forever, so for now I'll bring out something like a repeat 10. And let's put it inside of that. If I want this to go all the way across my screen, I'll start the sprite that this code is on over to the left-hand side, and let's see how far this gets us. Alright, 10 is not going to get all the way across the screen. Let's try 20. Drag this over to the side. 20 is a lot closer, still not quite there. Now, after some trial and error, I already know that 24 is actually about the perfect distance. So 24 gets me all the way across. And eventually, I'll change the coordinates of the starting location of my sprite to be in the very bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Now, while you're experimenting, and you probably should be experimenting to try to get everything feeling just right, you'll notice my stage is getting a little bit messy here. I've got little bricks everywhere. So it's a good idea to do an easy reset button. So I've also created this go to X and Y of 0 and 0. That means the middle of the screen. And I just attached a pen clear button to it. So we can simply click that and everything's cleaned up. And then I can test out my code and clean it up as needed. So building this code here is something that you're going to want to do. And now it's time to figure out how to get it to move up and then move in the opposite direction. Well, we already know that to move up, we need to make a change in the Y position. So I'll be bringing out another motion and change Y, which by default is set to 10, which happens to be the right number. Now to start moving it to the left, because our goal is to start in the bottom left hand of the screen, we've done our first chunk of code where we will move all the way to the right. Now we want to move up and left. So this gets us moving up. To move left or right, we want to bring out a change X. Keep in mind, guys, a really common mistake while people are learning this is to use a set X instead of change X. And those are two very different things, actually. So make sure that you're using change instead of set blocks here. Now I'm going to change X by -10 to start moving this to the left. So you can see we've gone up and left just a little bit there. But now we want to draw a whole nother row of bricks going the opposite direction, going back to the left-hand side of the screen. We're actually going to just control-click and duplicate this block that we already have. And now let's think. We need to start moving to the left. So change X by +20. Well, that's going to get us moving to the right. So if we change this first X to -20 and then try this, well, that was an easy fix. All we need to do is take our first change X and change it from +20 to -20. And now if we were to move up and execute our first line of code again, we're going back to the right. And then move up and back to the left. We're getting very close. However, we're getting a bit of an effect where our program keeps creating a stairwell that goes up and to the left. And we don't want to constantly go up and to the left. We want to go straight up without this leaning stairway effect. So how can we fix that? Well, the reason this is happening is because every time we move up, we move a little bit to the left. We only want that to happen about half of the time. The other half of the time, let's duplicate our up and left code and change this to up and to the right code by making our X here +10 this time. And let's clear this and start from the bottom again. So we go 24 times to the right and up, and 24 times to the left and up to the right. 24 times to the right, up to the left, 24 times to the left, up and right. So we have two loops here, and they're doing exactly what we want them to do. But I still have to go between one loop to the next, clicking back and forth to get this done. So now is where the lesson of the day really comes in, nested loops. We are going to put both of these loops inside of another loop, and that is going to get us our finished product. So we're simply going to go to Control and bring out another repeat 10. And then inside of this repeat 10, I will put my first loop, and then also inside of this repeat 10, down below my change Y by 10 and change X by -10, I'm going to slip in my second loop. So let's clear this and go test that out. Looking good so far. Alright, 10 doesn't get us quite to the top of the screen. It looks like we're a little more than halfway, so let's try something like 18. And repeat this code 18 times and see if this gets us closer to the top. Almost there. Looks like that was just enough to get the job done. So really, if you've accomplished this, you've pretty much done what we needed to do, and you've learned how to use nested loops. We've got a loop that moves our bricks to the right, and a loop that moves our bricks to the left, and those are put inside of one greater loop that keeps the whole wall building all the way up to the top. So this is a great example of how to use nested loops. Now, if you really want to perfect this code, you can tell your sprite to, when the game starts, go to -240 in the X and -180 in the Y, and that will move your sprite down to the very bottom left-hand corner. And then, as it repeats these two loops, you'll start from the very bottom left-hand corner automatically and move up to the top. And of course, I attached all of this to when green flag clicked, which means when the game starts, it just starts to execute our code without needing to click or press anything. So there you have it, nested loops. So this is just one example, but there's a lot of practical ways to use this inside of game design. Anytime that you want to perform a repetitive task, loops can really come in handy. It could be used for enemy movement, platform movement, procedural generation of assets, and a whole lot more. Well, that's it for today, so until next time, good luck and have fun.